今日はグローバルセミナーということで、英語でちょっと話したいと思います。So, at first, for students, please turn off your mic and video as usual. And then again, this is the program manager of this entrepreneurship course from the University of Tokyo. Today, we hold a special event global seminar. So please welcome Mr. Reiner Sternfeld and Mr. Shinichi Nikkuni.
First of all, thank you for providing this honored opportunity to present the Nordic Ninja and especially give the opportunity to Rainer to speak to the best selected student in Japan. So this is very honored for us Nordic Ninja to have such kind of this session. Then let's try to be very interactive because thanks for already sending some questions to the other slide. Already we saw 3 questions. They are very interesting already. But so let me introduce a bit about what is Nordic Ninja, what we are doing. Then I hand over to Rainer. Then he can speak about his story, background, his entrepreneurial journey, and also how he thinks about the startups from the capitalist side. Then maybe if there's a bit more time allowed, maybe we can talk about Slash event which happened last week. It is one of the still the largest European event, which still we had. That event attracted still 9,000 people from almost all over the world, still in this under these circumstances. Then we have time for more questions and any like discussions, comments, anything. But let me start. So we are Nordic Ninja. Basically, we are connecting Nordic innovation with Japanese networks and Silicon Valley mindset. Then we can come to this point later. Then Then let me get back to Japanese a bit. But 本講義ですけれども、ライナーさんのですね、グローバルな企業ストーリーの成功と失敗も含めてダイナミズムを少しでも共有させていただいて、で、皆様、ここに参加されている皆様、今日、企業コースを取られているという形で、かなりの方々が実際に起業家になる、もしくはもうすでになられているところだと思いますが、その中で多分、個々人の方が自分のパーソナリティとかそういったもの、能力だけではなくて、性格みたいなものを含めて、どういった形で自分が勝ち抜く起業家となれるか、特に日本マーケットを超えてグローバルマーケットを勝ち抜くというイメージを少しでも持っていただくことに、我々が貢献できればと思っております。Sorry, this was only in Japanese, and then let me come back. So this is the agenda today. Basically, we have 4 points, but basically the main point is the story from Rainer. Then let me go quickly. So we are Nordic Ninja, and the Nordic Ninja is the official brand of this fund, Nordic Fund. We are running for almost 3 years since 2019. Then Rainer, myself, Shinichi Nikkuni, and we have 2 more partners, and we have some investment directors and associates. In total, we have 7 investment team, and behind them, we have like board members and like advisors, etc. We have roughly around 10 people working on this fund upon landing. And we headquartered in Helsinki, Finland, but we have offices in Tallinn and Stockholm, but we covered Nordic and Baltic region. Why New Nordics? We call New Nordics means basically Baltic and Nordics. And this colored region, actually it's a bit beyond this New Nordics, but basically this Northern Europe region is really the core of the startup activities in Europe. So the statistics shows basically the number of startups per capita, like per population. So basically Estonia is the number 1, Ireland comes second, Denmark is third, Finland fourth, etc. etc. So basically the area, especially this, we call sometimes Tallinn and Helsinki, and also Stockholm. This triangle is really kind of the hot spot of the startups. And so even though this is the population-wise, economy-wise, the whole New Nordics is only about Greater Tokyo. Metropolitan Tokyo is like a similar size of the population and the GDP, but they have greater number of startups and more unicorns. In this region, we counted recently, we have 40 unicorns as a total. And even this year, this region added 12 unicorns only in 1 year. So this is really growing market. And what we do, so we have a 101 million euro fund, basically based on here, the investing in Nordic and Baltic startups. And we provide very hands-on support, like even recruiting talent, CXO level, setting a sales organization, setting an IP strategy, etc., etc. Then we, of course, as with this background with Japanese networks, we provide some Japanese networks, and especially with our LP, means the limited partners, basically investor to the fund. We are backed by the Japanese bank called JBIC, 国際協力銀行, and also Panasonic, Omron, Honda. Those corporate investors are trusted us and invested their capital to us. Then we are deploying their capital on behalf of them. Then basically we are we are investing in the kind of very high, good, sustainable companies or like impact companies, but also we can expect a good return for the fund. And yeah, this is kind of really core areas we invest. These two circles, especially the overlapping point is really core. So digital plus sustainable transformation is really the core thing that we have. So far, we have invested 15, actually 16 companies, which one is not yet announced. Maybe Raina can talk a bit later. On top, I think we are signing one more company. So we are investing, let's say 5 to 6 companies a year this is like for 3 years activities, but we see roughly 1,000 cases, like 1,000 deals per year. Then we just select even less than 1% of the companies we see or like we meet. So this is very kind of rare opportunities to invest. And a lot of cases we have to say no, but this is not because the founders are not excellent of things. There are a lot of the factors that play in the role of this saying no. But still, we do believe that digital plus sustainable, a lot of new things could come from new Nordics, and we'd like to expand and enhance our activities more in this region into the future. Then I'd like to shut up from here. Then I'd like to hand to Rainer, my colleague, my partner. Then he can talk about a lot about his story or anything he's like. So let me introduce Rainer Sternfeld, our managing partner. Thank you, Rainer, for joining today.
Thank you, Shinichi, and thank you for having me today. I have this opportunity to talk a little bit about my own story, how I arrived here at Nordic Ninja as a managing partner, and I moved back to Estonia from California, where I was building my company called Planet OS. But more broadly, maybe I will be able to give you a background on my story and hopefully answer some of the questions that you have, and you can see how your story can be similar when you build your career, your companies. So, but maybe first to give you a little bit of context, what I do at Nordic Ninja and why I do these things is it's kind of simple. I have spent the last 20 years, this year turned 20 years my professional career, and I've spent most of it building technology companies, products, teams across the United States, Europe, and also in Japan. I'll tell you a little bit about that as well. And most of the things that I've been involved in have been around digital infrastructure, and they've one way or another have had a sustainability component in there. My last company that I built was called Planet OS, and so what I'm interested in is building platforms or tools, digital infrastructure that give creative people, engineers, tools to create their best ideas, and that platform should also allow them to reach their audiences, so it empowers different communities. So so that's really important, and you can see 4 companies here in the bottom left that all fit the same category. I just recently invested in a 5th company that I will work with at Nordic Ninja. So you would have companies like Mavenoid here in the bottom left that has created a universal product support that's driven by OpenAI's GPT-3 engine. So that natural language processing allows companies like Panasonic, which is one of our investors, Honda, or other companies around the world, Husqvarna, to use universal product support to reach their consumers. And if you as a consumer have a problem with using a dishwasher or a chainsaw or a lawnmower, you can immediately get help from the brand and not look at the PDF or go back to the store. We have companies like Vario in Finland that is building human eye resolution, immersive experiences through headsets, and helping a lot of Japanese companies actually to design and engineer new kinds of products using virtual reality and mixed reality. Or we have Verif, which is online ID verification for virtually every human on the planet, it is growing at an incredibly fast rate. And now during the pandemic, as we all know, we are at home. A lot of the services are becoming digital, becoming served over the internet, meaning that you have to be able to verify who you are in the real world. And so Verif helps to do just that. Or for example, Logmore, that has created a QR code based, dynamic QR code based data locker that, for example, DHL is using to distribute Pfizer vaccines around the world under 70 degrees centigrade. So again, this is a solution that really helps to fight the pandemic, but this solution is used by over 400 companies from pharmaceuticals, food, and electronics industries to make sure that your shipments of, let's say, sensitive or perishable goods remain intact and remain under control, and you will know if they have been delivered under the right conditions or not. So with that aside, maybe kind of like to preface my own slides, I would say that, well, I have had the fortune to be involved in different kinds of organizations, whether it's a family company, whether it's a large corporation like ABB, which I will talk about. I have been a university engineer. I've been a board member of the World Ocean Council. I've been a part of Silicon Valley Corporation, and of course built my own companies. I've founded or co-founded now 11 organizations and/or companies. So I've managed change in very different situations. Small companies, big companies, you know, NGOs, family companies, all sorts of organizations, and it's different, but there are very similar problems which have to do with the way people think about change. And so maybe that's what I will be focusing on then. And now I have a technical question, which is, should I share my screen with the slides, or are my slides somewhere with you there at the university?
I think you can share. It'll be much easier, then you can control freely. Maybe I can stop my sharing now for the time being.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, I stopped now.
Okay. So then let me do this. Let's see. Tell me if you can. Let me do a full screen.
I'm seeing the canvas. Yep.
Okay. See this? Okay.
Cool.
You know, for those who are into notebooks, will notice that this is a regular Noji notebook that I've used as a tool to build this presentation by hand. And this is a presentation that I was asked to give just before the pandemic really hit it off in January 2020. And the idea was to present a very similar concept, is that how do you reinvent yourself as you go from one step of your life into another, and maybe to start here would be more interesting, is that before I founded my Silicon Valley startup, I had quite a different career, I would say. I started out as a university engineer in robotics. I have a master's degree in robotics, and I was lucky to be invited to be on the team of unmanned vehicles, which was just founded by Professor Mark Tomre at Caltech, who had come from MIT back to Estonia, and then got a grant from the Department of Defense to start building different capabilities around how do you build unmanned vehicles. And vehicles at the time were not just ground vehicles, but also aerial vehicles, or drones, as we call them today. And this was in the very beginning. This was in 2003 and 4, and that really changed the way I think. And even though I have a degree in robotics, most of my life have been around building really data platforms, so just an infrastructure that builds tools for people. So that's something that you will notice throughout this presentation. But from there on, I started a family company where we manufactured specialty parts for mostly industrial customers. and one of the customers became ABB, where we manufactured wind turbine parts, and then it sort of became a bigger relationship with ABB. So I was invited to come in and build and lead a project that ended up being end-to-end software to manage switchgear kind of business unit, from sales to design to engineering to manufacturing, packaging, and shipping. And that was ultimately connected to a lot of different systems. And so from there, I got invited to implement SAP across 3 Baltic states in 10 months, 22 cost centers and 5 currencies at the time. This was 2008. And that was at the time was the largest project that I had ever led. We had 1,300 employees, and it's quite a big change. And so this was very interesting for, I was 25 years old at the time. So this was, again, I had never even seen an ERP system before I joined SAP, ABB. And so this was again, a lesson in change management, product development. And so, moving on from there, or actually, I should say in parallel, there was a project that I had to do, which was designing a Statue of Liberty of Estonia. And this was an architectural contest where my friends and I decided to participate. We had just graduated university. We were patriotic, and we thought that Estonia never had a Statue of Liberty before, and why don't we just submit something, and somehow from the 44 entries, we were selected as the winner. And so today, if you visit Tallinn, you will see a 23-meter tall glass sculpture that has Cross of Liberty on top, and it was quite a difficult project, probably still the most difficult project, because it's so political and so it's built into public space, and it's a very difficult timeline, very difficult materials. Glass is quite difficult to work with in the Nordics, so things like that. And then somehow it happened that I became the member of a management board at ABB across the Baltics at 25, and so then I had this job to change everything that I possibly see, and I had many teams. I had the IT, the operational excellence, health and safety, new business development, all sorts of teams all reporting to me that changed the culture of the organization. And ABB is a large corporation, but at the same time, the ABB in the Baltic states was considered very entrepreneurial. We were an emerging market for that company. And so we were able to establish quite a lot of new business models and take them across the world into ABB organizations. And I was in charge of leading and building a new campus that completely changed the way we look at manufacturing layouts. And then probably the most interesting normal job that I had was actually leading a global team that established an electric vehicle charging network, a fast charging network across Estonia. That was 10 years ago, and we won that government tender in Estonia. And a funny fact there is that we actually used the Japanese Shademo protocol, charging protocol, to do that, because Europe or the United States didn't have anything close to that at the time. And so there was a close partnership between Japan and Estonian government at the time, and then ABB put together a team. We had to acquire a company in the Netherlands to actually be able to provide this solution. And so today, when you come to Estonia, you have charging stations across the country, everywhere. So which is great. Then I had a bunch of side projects. Not that this previous slide was boring, but I really spent my 20s working. I mean, I've really spent my last 20 years working, and we what really brought me to the startup world, I think, it was a company called GrabCAD, which you can see on the left here. If you Google GrabCAD, you will find, or go to grabcad.com, you will find that it is a community for mechanical engineers. And today it has over 9 million engineers. On this slide, you see 6 million. So this was almost 2 years ago, this presentation. This started from my friend at the university who had this idea, and this company was sold to the Israeli 3D printing company Stratasys in 2015, and so the company really figured out a way how to build a cloud-based CAD engineering system, or collaboration system, if you will, that would have a kernel online, and then that in itself was so powerful to bring every engineer, mechanical engineer in the world to that community so they could collaborate together. And that was a very special experience for myself as a board member, and that helped me to create my companies in the future. And I had been teaching product development and other things at the university as well, but then we had this kind of a studio, a product development studio called FlyDog with friends, and we would build all sorts of prototypes and products for industrial customers, and one of them was a buoy, a data buoy. So that's what it looked like. The idea was to measure phytoplankton concentration in the Baltic Sea, because we have a lot of herring in the Baltic Sea, but at the same time we also have, from the Soviet Union era, we have quite a lot of dissolved metals in the Baltic Sea. So unfortunately, if the fish spend too much time at the bottom of the sea, they will capture too much dissolved metals, and that makes the fish at larger volumes not very healthy to eat. And so the scientists wanted to get basically a robot in the sea, which is what you see here, to measure phytoplankton concentration vertically. And then every time it would measure, it would send the signal with the data over a mobile network to our server, and we would analyze this and produce charts like this. So that's what started my entire kind of fascination with data and how data can tell stories. And that was the project that really took us on a European tour to investigate, what are the different problems around collecting data. And then what we really found out that the problems were not about hardware or, let's say, robots. The problem was really understanding the data and sharing data and collaborating around the data. And I remember we had a meeting at the National Oceanographic Center in Southampton, UK, where one marine biologist and an oceanographer who had been working in the Antarctic was telling his stories about how difficult it was to work. And so we kind of left that meeting asking that, what if there was a Google for marine data? This is, again, 10 years ago, 10 and a half years ago. And from there, we had this idea to build a company called Marine Explorer. So this was like everything that I had done before that was a lot of opportunities. When you grow up in a country like Estonia in the 90s, so a lot of stuff happening every day, something new happens. And you say yes to everything because you never know what can lead to something else. And then in 2012, we started Marine Explorer, which became really the first big data platform designed specifically for ocean data that was able to, which was a virtual database layer that was able to process all kinds of data from these devices that you can see here on this image. So whether it would be an weather station, satellite imagery, multidimensional arrays, computer models, sonars, things like that, ADCPs, and that normally all lived in a different kind of database. But how we had this technology, and we were thinking, okay, how do we how do we actually test that it works, and how do we develop this? Because if your customers are going to be large enterprises and governments, that's going to be incredibly slow and incredibly expensive, and they may not give you the best answers either, because they will give you only the answers they want to see. But we wanted to create a product for everybody. So what we did is we took our technology and we actually built an open data community, making a lot of open data around the ocean available to the world. And so we were using the same methods from what I had learned at GrabCat to really approach this community's problems, and having people to understand what the stories, what the data tells them. So that's how we got started. This is one of the earlier views of what we called the data studio. It was a lot of work to make these things happen. The rainbow visual you see here is the sea surface temperature, a global sea surface temperature data set, an average of that day, just 10th of September 2012, as you can see here. So, but then from there, we built a bunch of different tools that allow you to, search and explore and create custom data sets, find community members, collaborate, download specific custom data sets and things like that. So it's really changed the way people understood that data and mobilized the community. And of course, as time went by, a few years went by, and we started to get requests from others, non-ocean companies, so to speak. And we really, thought that there is a bigger opportunity. We found out that there are all these sensors around the world that the humans have deployed over the past, let's say 30 years or so. Humanity has really used sensors to measure everything around the world, and it's only increasing. And so that's why we renamed the company to Planet OS and started working with all, let's say, Earth data, geospatial data, the IoT data, and then try to figure out what is the business model. And the interesting thing that happened to us is that I call this the Cinderella effect for startups, which is that if you have an incredibly good piece of technology, but you haven't really figured out yet the business model, and you don't always have a lot of money, these days there's a lot of funding in the startup community, especially in climate tech. But 10 years ago when we started, nobody wanted to invest in climate tech. Very few people did. We got really lucky. We had Tony Fadell, who invented the iPod, and we had John Tallinn, who was one of the founders of Skype, as investors, and we had Philips, and we had Intertrust, and we had a bunch of interesting companies investing in us. But what really happened was that when you are, let's say, smart but poor, then in Cinderella effect happens. And so we had a bunch of different acquisition offers that were really not good offers from our point of view. So we said no to everything. But many of these companies went on to become extremely successful. All of these 4 different offers that we had became very successful, and we wanted to continue doing our thing. So as an entrepreneur, you will always find that as a difficult question, that if you really have a good offer, that do you want to continue building your own company, or do you want to join somebody else and make something bigger together? So I will just fast forward from some of these things because I don't think that's particularly useful for this context. But what happened then is that we decided to really continue independently, and we started working with a lot of different organizations. So on the top, you see commercial customers that we started to engage with. Offshore oil and gas was very interesting because this was post-Macondo oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. So the environmental protection and environmental decision-making became paramount to operations in a hazardous environment. Shipping always is an interesting domain because of optimization and costs associated to shipping goods, carbon footprint as well. Offshore wind was taking off, so that was very interesting. And that already, fast forward, offshore wind became our most significant source of revenue, and I have been involved with wind power without planning it, but I've been involved with wind power for 15 years. I mean, now I'm not anymore, but I have had manufacture parts. At ABB, we had the largest wind farm or wind turbine factory in the world. And then we built software at PlanOS, and later we built products together with Munich Re around insurance, parametric insurance. But I digress. Going back, we had projects with NOAA, NASA. We continued working with open data, and we were really generally quite well known in the community. This journey really took us to the White House, to United Nations, also all sorts of climate boards, like the Risky Business Project that was started by Michael Bloomberg around creating climate solutions for the world. So this really helped us to understand the business models around the world, and here you see one of these examples that we had with NASA after the Paris Climate Accord in 2015. The world started to pay attention to the data being used, and actually in California there's the NASA Ames Research Center where they host the data, a lot of data around the climate, and also climate models of around 30 countries, including Japan. And so we created, together with the NASA Earth Exchange team, we created a tool that helped everybody to create a custom data set in the matter of minutes instead of over a week that would generally take time. So it's using user experience, a graphical user interface, together with the modern cloud-based technology. At the time, we used Docker. We created a very special kind of an engine that would then generate this data kit. And but that wasn't really like a big business opportunity. I think the big business opportunity was really wind farms at the time. So the problem was that all these different data systems that you generally have in a wind farm were presented on a different screen, and the operators, as well as the site managers, as well as the let's say board members in any company, required information that would allow to understand the daily operation, but also kind of a monthly business results or annual business results of not only their one wind turbine or one site, but their entire fleet. So if you have 160 wind farms, you kind of want to make sure that you're making money with them. So that's what we did. And today that number is close to 200 wind farms that are using this product called the Power Board that you can see on the right here in the black box, these screens. And so we really learned so much during this process, that how do you actually integrate these different data sets? How do you process them? How do you show them? How do different people evaluate this data? So we did that for some time, and then in August 2017, we got an offer from one of our investors, Intertrust, which is actually very well known in Japan because, well, it has two companies, Sony and World Innovation Labs, as their owners or investors. And Intertrust is really a famous company because they are the inventor of digital rights management. So back in the day when CDs were invented together between Sony and Philips, you had to invent ways how to protect digital rights. And especially when Napster came and the music industry was almost going bankrupt, Intertrust had this technology that enabled the music industry to bounce back. So why they were interested in Plan was our ability to work with IoT data. And if you think about energy data, if you have a smart home device, if you have your smartphone, a lot of data about yourself or your home is actually kind of personal, but then there's electric usage and things like that. So if you think about data and you think about bits, then this becomes property, and so property needs to be managed, and therefore the InnoTrust and PlanOS marriage became very natural. And so InnoTrust was a global company. It allowed our technology to be immediately deployed all over the world. And what happened then was that I was flying around the world, and I was in Japan every month or two. So that's how I ended up being here at Nordic Ninja, because I was a Nordic person in California that was very fascinated by Japan, and I really liked the idea that Nordic Ninja had, and that's how I joined. So that's in short my story. I'm sure I went over time, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
No, actually, it's very on time. Thanks, Raina. Actually, I see one question already, and maybe we can cover already the maybe interesting question here, some. Then we can continue later. Then one question about PlanOS. Then basically, do you have any decisions you'd like to change if you can now in the especially in the journey with PlanOS? I know this is always hindsight, and so many things you'd like to change, but what things you maybe it's not a regret, because this is a process of learning everything. You can learn everything new, but what could be,
Well, you have to learn from your mistakes, and I have made probably every mistake there can be made, and everybody will make mistakes. The question is, how fatal are these mistakes? And I think I made a lot of mistakes. I have thought about this quite a lot, analyzed different parts. But when you think about mistakes, you kind of very often come back to the very first mistakes, because the mistakes that you made later, they were a result of the first mistakes. So and there are small mistakes and big mistakes, and I think when you focus on big mistakes, that's when it makes sense. So I think the big mistakes that we made were around we really allowed we had the wrong set of investors. Let's start there. I don't think we had the right set of investors. Again, I mentioned that the knowledge and the ecosystem at the time was very different around climate tech. The support was very different, and I had very good advisors from the startup ecosystem side, but none of them had this experience in climate tech. Again, we're much smarter now than we were then. So I had the wrong investors. I think the way we managed the beginning of the product strategy was wrong. But maybe one of the more important mistakes that we made that is usable by you all is that when you think about business models, so we started with Marine Explorer, we created a community, we created tools. That was initially the idea that it helps us to develop the product better, but I saw also a business opportunity there. The problem was that the journey to build more revenue would come much later. And so we got a lot of pressure from the investors that we would focus on the enterprise really quickly, so we would make money quickly. And that was the biggest mistake that I think we made, because in hindsight, if you think about all these other companies that we work with now, Shin as well, is that when you force your companies to make money really quickly, you may be making the company smaller in the future.
Yep.
And that's what happened to us. So we really wanted to change the world, and we did, but that would have taken another 3-4 years of funding to get to that right place. And timing is everything, of course. So I think the initial mistakes were we chose to make money too soon. We did not build a business development team as strong as the engineering team. Our engineering team was absolutely top of the world. It still is an insanely good team. I'm so proud of that. So that was number 2. And number 3, we had the wrong investor makeup. So these were the three bigger mistakes, but of course there are tens of more mistakes.
Thanks for the kind of very transparent answer. Then maybe let me disclose my mistakes, just kind of to be fair. As you know, Lina, maybe I also co-founded a startup in Cambridge just after MBA back in 7 years ago. But maybe my biggest mistake was then when we decided because this was the kind of invention from the university, then we have kind of freedom, which co-founder owns how much kind of things. Then I think in that discussion, we did two really fair, two democratic way in a sense, because we had to choose a more a bit more skilled, because even I got roughly 10% in the beginning. This was a bit too much for the business guy for this tech startup in the business, because they still need a lot, as you said, they need, this kind of company requires a lot of capital. So then the business guy is important, of course, but not that important of 10%. Then I had to, maybe I had to tell that, oh, I don't need, you shouldn't give me 10%. You give me just 5%, that's fine. Then we can work on later option pool, everything. But I was kind of, okay, if I can get 10%, not too bad. I thought, then I think this was kind of maybe screwed some dynamics of the team. So I think from also in hindsight from the current experience as an investor for 7 years or something, then because if there's so many co-founders, and then they each own 10%, 20%, this sounds a bit weird. And then we, as an investor, we like to have a CEO owns kind of quite a not controlling majority, even some a really important majority as a significant investor, as a significant shareholder of the company, so that he is really incentivized and aligned in terms of interest. Yeah, thank you. And then also, let me just check the questions, but unless maybe, okay, we have some still time, 15 minutes. So let me just.
I saw one question, if I may address. There was a question. Let me see. There was a question that was
the
three key qualities.
Maybe we can cover here.
Three key qualities. Yeah, before starting any business. So maybe this, as a founder myself, I would address, I think, three things here. So the three things that I would recommend all founders or investors, doesn't matter really, if you invest in companies or you are a team member, to think about is three things. One is probably the most important thing in a startup, in a corporation, anything when you start something new, is that the exercise of starting something new and you want to maximize impact is that you want to find what is right in the market, not who is right. And so it's really a set of experiments to find the right answer. And it's kind of the winning versus being right. If you want to be right, you will not win. So the only exercise is that you need to find out what is right in the market for your business. What is the solution for the problem? If you focus on the problem and not on the solution, I think you will find the solution. So that's really key. And if you find the people that think like that in your founding team, you will most certainly win. If you want to find people that want to be right, then you will not win. And that requires people to be very open and transparent and lose the ego and not care about making mistakes, but very much care about finding the right answers. So that's number one. Number two, and that's obviously already very easy to understand, it's sense of urgency. You have to have sense of urgency. You are in competition with the others. If you sit around and there's no momentum, there's no speed, then nothing will happen. So if you have, number one, this idea that you want to find the right answers, what is true in the market, and you're doing this at a record speed, then you find that you can be the winner of the market. And then number three, and this is also sometimes a problem in the Nordics, but less and less so. It was a very big problem in 20 years ago or so. And I know this can be also tough in Japan sometimes, which is that both the Nordics and Japan have this pursuit to perfection. Everything has to be a proper product. And what has changed, of course, in the digital world is that this pursuit to perfection comes from iterations. So iterate, and then you find the right solution. Perfection doesn't come from your first try. So basically, there's this maxim in the startup world, which is that done is better than perfect. So if you combine those three things, you want to find out what's right in the marketplace. You do it as fast as possible, and you experiment, you iterate all the time. You always question yourself, and you focus on the problem. And if you find the same kind of people to work with to do that, then you have a winning formula. And so that requires a completely different setting, and in a way, it's nothing new. This is how nature works. If you look at how evolution works, how biological organisms experiment and evolve, they go through so many different options. They eliminate things that don't work, focus on the things that work, and then scale. So the startup world optimizes for the same thing.
Thanks, Anna. If I may, maybe also I'd like to add one more quality in the sense like how you can really attract people in terms of your teammate, but also like investors. Basically, you start by yourself only. Then first you have to find a co-founder. Maybe you don't need it, but maybe it's good to have like one co-founder or not. Then also you need a first investor sooner or later. Then, but the first setup, as Rainer put it, is so important. Then can you really attract a very best talent, like best people, best investor out of the world? This is really kind of a very, maybe also another on top of the three things what Rainer said. I feel so it is hard to nail down to the three, but still, I think this is also a very important factor as a startup founder, like as any kind of business person, maybe even. Okay, thank you. So we have some, actually there's two more questions directly to your journey, Rainer. Maybe we can come to that. So then maybe I think two questions seems to asking the similar thing that like, I think you mentioned you received several offers, but you decided to go independent rather. But then the question was like, there have been some, you mentioned several offers you had, then there have been some offers. Then what do you think? Do you think you should have taken that or like what you're feeling about the offer? Then maybe this is another decision you made.
Yeah. So I had two, well, out of the 4 offers, 3 of them were so good that I would have become not just a millionaire, but an incredibly wealthy person. As a result, because all these 3 have become extremely successful. One was acquired by Google for $3 billion, one went public, and the other one is still private with multi-billion valuation. And at the time, they were very 2 of them were in early days, and one of them was already very, very, growing very fast. And there were 2 things to think about. One was simply a simple question: do I want to continue building Planet OS, or do I want to join somebody else and then we build something together that's bigger? Because you do something together, you can make a bigger thing. So that's great. But that had a moral implication, because our investors had invested in Planet OS, in the mission, and our team. Again, when we were talking about qualities of a founder, if you have a vision, if you have like a company like Planet OS, and if your goal is to make all Earth data transparent so we can help industries to make better decisions about the planet and build better products, that's a big vision, and your team has joined to make that vision happen. And then you have offers that are doing something different, but they're very interested in your technical abilities, because you are an absolute superstar technology team. We patented our stuff. It's used all over the world. And then that would have meant walking away from that, and also walking away from our investors, and they would have not made the return that they wanted. And so I think these offers came too early to us, although we would have made more money in hindsight, but it's always life. And today I would have done a lot of stuff differently. But at the time, why my consciousness is pure and clean is that I didn't turn anybody, I didn't turn my back to my team. I didn't turn my back to existing investors. And I think that's what's really important.
Thanks, Ryan. I think then this should cover the two questions, the recent questions. Maybe then we can come back to the two other questions because which were already posted before starting.
Okay.
So maybe
okay.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Then let me screen come back to this let me talk a bit about Slash, I think, because this could be also interesting. Yeah, I think, can you see my screen now? Slash is, yeah. So let me just cover. So the Slash is it just started 2008. So 10 years plus 13 years ago, but it's more like then it started. It's just like a 200 people's event. It's very small. Then there's no event in the next year, maybe because of financial crisis. Then 2010, then started the 400 people. Then it started growing rapidly. Then even before the corona, all the participants from all over the world is like 25,000 per year, only for 2 days event. And there's 3.5 thousand startups and 2,000 investors. And then this year, still under this COVID circumstances, they decided to run the show, but then still they keep the quality or like a number of startups investors, but they limited the other audience, the normal audiences, medias, corporate, then try to come back to focus what is really important for the startup community. This is like a matching between the startups and the investors, and also the communications between investors so important. And maybe then just one fact is basically this is all run by students. So this is a Slash has been and will be so like a student-run organization. As this is also a place for the not only a Finnish but this Nordic students can learning a big thing. Then they can learn all this kind of entrepreneurship journey from the find a sponsor, set a theme. Then also collected all this attendance, everything. Then all this you have to also build your matchmaking platform, everything. Then this is becoming like also another source of the startup in a sense. Then I think maybe some of you guys already have used the food delivery platform called Volt from Finland. Actually, this team came from Slash team. Then the CEO is once upon a time the Slash CEO. So then this is kind of phenomenal thing I just wanted to share. And of course, there's the events. There are so many side events more than the main event. Then there also the Nordic Ninja was part of it, and we really collected a very important more than 200 people joining our kind of dinner. And the matchmaking made like there's 40,000 kind of meeting requests only for these 2 days, and there's so many things. Even under this COVID circumstances, the people are wearing masks, but still people are really hunger for meeting people in person. Then we can exchange more like direct and also indirect information together. So this is happening, and hopefully next year we have more people, younger entrepreneurs and younger students from Japan to join this Slash. Usually there's like a booth from Fukuoka city, and there's a bunch of Japanese corporate, but under this current circumstance, there's only a handful of people came to Slash this year, but I hope next year this will be changed. And there was a Slash Tokyo event, I think up until 2019-ish, but also we hope that we can somehow help to this Slash Tokyo come back to Japan again. Okay, thanks. Then let me see, maybe let me switch the screen. Okay, then we have some more questions. Then you can add more. Then I think that is it important to have a technology expert even if you understand the financials and the key metrics of your business startup? Do you mean this is kind of maybe, I don't think it's for like a VC question. So maybe this is like as a founder, maybe as a part of a founder team. Yeah, founder question, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to answer these yes or no questions because I've seen so many teams. You have the founders of Airbnb, for example, were designers, not business or engineers, just designers. but they really understood the problem really well, and they did everything they could to find the right people. So, but it really depends on the company. Like, of course, if you are a deep tech startup, the more technology driven your innovation is, the more the answer will be that yes, you have to have technology people, otherwise there's no way then you can do, otherwise you can't do it. If you have more of a business model innovation type of startup like Airbnb was, then you don't have to have a technology expert, but you will benefit from that. So I think the answer to that question can be made easier if I would know what you're building, for example. But let's say this way, I think more often the answer is yes than no.
And that's fair, and it's great that you didn't say like it depends. The most boring answer to these kind of questions.
Yeah. It's not even like it's a lazy answer. Let's say this way.
Yeah, no, I know. But if there's still the person who submitted this question, then if you like to add some context, I will happy. I can just voice over here in this Zoom chat, because this is quite really kind of close setup, then you can free to speak up.
Yeah.
Then meanwhile, I think we can talk to the second question, how to find outside investors. Of course, Slash is one thing. Then it is beneficial to have that, even if the startup is not mature. Good question. Actually.
Well, that's there's no how do I say? There's no formula or anything like that, but it's very clear that you should. The best way to do this is that if you start talking to investors before you start raising money, just when you do some research and you find the investors who are experienced in your field, people that have been founders and turned investors, they tend to be quite good investors, both statistically as well as just founder mindset. It's not always true, but that's more in the later stages, but in the beginning that's true. And I think that if you approach investors and ask them for advice, what they would be looking for, and you tell them what you're building, then they give you already quite a lot of good advice. So again, you should not approach the investor relationship as a yes-no relationship. Hey, I need money. Yes, no, goodbye. It's a relationship, and as any relationship, it needs to be built. And the earlier you start building that relationship, the easier it gets to raise money later. So if your startup is not mature, treat the investors as advisors, ask them for advice, ask what they're really looking for, and continue to build. So that's number one. Number two, try to batch fundraising together in a short time frame. Don't do that over like 6 months or whatever. It does take 6 months sometimes if you're bigger around and later stage, but for an angel and seed funding, you should be able to get stuff done in just 2 to 4 weeks, because the amount of money that you're raising, maybe I don't know, $50,000 or $100,000. That's not a lot of money, and you may need only 2, 3, 4 angel investors to put that together. So two advice. One is that start early, treat this as a relationship, ask for advice. And number two, when you actually go fundraising, you have the materials and everything ready, try to do this in a short time frame as possible, so you have options, and then work that network together. Put the investors together. Maybe they want to do this stuff together. No investor wants to invest alone. I mean, that's very rare.
Thanks, Raina. Maybe so. There's investors are focusing specific stages, basically, even angels and institutional investors like VCs. So in the sense, maybe you should also ask what is the right timing for you to invest. But still, then you can build the relationship from before that. It's better to start knowing each other for longer time, then you can judge and you can build a trust. Then, of course, there's some VCs, like micro VCs, who invest even the company is not yet formed. Like there's only founder and some paper of the idea, then there's some company. The most likely, but this is most likely an angel investor case. And this maybe as a background, Nordic and Baltic has a very kind of transparent, very good organization in terms of business angel investments. They're like official associations, they're like a private association. Then you can easily find some like a pitching event. Then you can pitch your idea. Then you can get some bunch of good discussions and some potential investment. You can easily be matched with potential investors. So maybe this is a bit different context of the Japanese ecosystem, maybe which we can improve a bit more into the future. Okay, thanks. Maybe okay. There's one more comment. This is maybe this was I think the supporting fact in terms of the previous question. In this, do you need like a real technical founder, technical expert in the team? So if this advertising agency business like a food restaurant, okay, relatively less deep tech area.
Yeah. So advertising agency, that's well. Depends depends on the word of agency. Advertising business, as you know, has become incredibly technology oriented. That it's probably one of the most developed technology areas at all in the recent 20 years. It is so precise that it will be able to sell you the latest model of a fishing rod for a left-handed fisherman based in a small village in Italy, and it will find you. So that's an insane piece of technology, like Facebook, for example. If it's an agency business, I mean, then it's advice or positioning or marketing and knowing your customer, then it doesn't require technology expertise at all. It requires knowing how to find how to define the market and positioning. It's more, again, marketing and positioning type of a job. Food restaurant. Well, then that's complicated. Restaurants are not exactly like great ways to make money. It's always more about the art and the craft, and it's hard work, and that's why everybody respects the chefs, and it's art. But if you want to make this into a business, then almost all successful bigger restaurants are technology businesses or supply chain businesses. Then you definitely need a technology person.
Yeah, if you like try to build like a dark kitchen with some robotics, maybe you definitely need somebody for the technology expert. Yeah, thanks. Okay, would you tell me about someone in Sashka, I think, who is about somebody just
it's like a role model. I have one. I have one. Her name is April Ko. She's, I think, 25. No, 20. Now she's 27 or 8 something. Sorry, no, not 23. But she started programming around the age of 23, and she's the CEO and founder of Spring Health. You should check her out if that's something that you would like to have as a role model. She was on stage with the general partner of Nordzone, which is a Swedish venture capital fund, and invested in Spotify and other big names from the past.
Yep. Then I think that Mickey is already 27 years oldish, so he's a bit older. Mickey's he's a male name in Finland. He's a CEO of the Vault, and then they did the exit with 7 billion valuation to the DoorDash recently. So even this could happen for like 27 years old founder, 27, 28 years. So, okay. Would you recommend Japanese students to start a company in Nordic Baltic region? What are the pros and cons? Do you think that is a crazy idea? I don't think it's a crazy idea. And actually, Estonia accepts a lot of that. You can be an e-resident already. Maybe if you just go to the embassy of Estonia in Japan, in Tokyo, then you can create your company and you can open a bank account. But recommend, if you really want to go global, then you tap into the talent in this region. Then the relatively New Nordics is a relatively cheaper region in compared to Europe and the US. Then this could be a really solution. But right now, what do you think? I think we can really. I like this kind of bold idea. Yeah,
I honestly think that it's not like anything special. It doesn't matter. You can be anyone from anywhere, and the Nordic Baltic region is probably it's currently in the world one of the more interesting places because there is so much drive for innovation, and there's so much hunger for new people. We don't have a lot of people. 8 countries together where we operate today, we have 33.5 million people. So that's 3 times less than Japan, or actually almost 4, almost 4 times less than Japan.
Okay. Yeah. Then
everybody speaks English.
Yep. So then I try to learn Finnish language, but Finnish is so difficult. So I can speak like more, and then no worries. But still, then right now it's Estonian. We have Finnish people, Norwegian people in the team, but we basically we speak in English. And I think all this corporate process you can do through in English. Maybe some things you need some like a local advice, like a legal thing, but otherwise. As far as I know, all the startups I receive is already like they're like board minutes, like a Torishimari Yaku Gijiroku, everything is already in English, so that they expect to have like an international investors sooner or later. So this is fully in English. Then maybe just to have some balance, but still, if you really like, for example, if you really like to work on this like automotive industry, like a robotic industry, Japan might be a good place to start because you have like a good robotic players, good Japanese OEMs and tier 1 suppliers, like similar suppliers. So then the industry is there. So that you have a much near location that you can make an advantage of the also language as well. But yeah. As a market, this Nordic market, I can say also this is very transparent and it's based on trust. Everything is much smoother. Then really people here is open and they try to trust fast, even though like foreigners like me, so they accept a lot of things. Then it is quite straightforward with this, even some administrative things with the government.
If I can add, maybe I think for a Japanese founder, the Nordic countries would be maybe some of the best places to start a company because culture, work ethic, and the kind of empathy, and I think like things like data privacy and things like that, or even like aesthetics of products or like the product quality, it's very similar to Japan. So I think you will find a lot of friends and a lot of support immediately in the Nordics. And the way people talk and behave is more easier. So if you go, from Tokyo to New York, which is super high energy, super loud, if you like that kind of stuff, and I do, but it's very different, and you have to be able to modulate between different cultures. But I think Japan and the Nordics are very similar, more similar than you think.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Okay. How are you trying to protect the data shared by different countries in your company? I think maybe I take this as a startup case, but as you know, in Europe, there's like a rules called GDPR. Then basically this is a protocol which every EU single country they apply. So basically, there's also the startups are applying for the same rules and same standards. So in this sense, yeah, sharing is basically like a consumer data or like a privacy data can be shared only with there's a strong consent from the things. Then there's another way to protect in terms of this. But okay then.
Well, really hard to answer in that sense. I think again the Nordics. If this is still about the Nordics, then that's different. But again, since I have been working around data ownership and data rights management for quite a bit, there are so many different solutions to this question. For example, you don't always have to share data. You can sometimes share the results, or because depends how you define data, because one thing is to store the data and own it, the other one is to read it, the other one is to create reports. So it's a very big question, but I think Europe in general is the most advanced, and everybody in the world is trying to mimic what Europe is doing, and I think there are ways to make this very transparent while still protecting your consumer rights. One thing that the world has not figured out yet, and since we are on this subject, is that how do you make data equitable? So if you own personally some data as an individual, and some business uses this in their algorithm or benefits from a piece of that data, how do you get paid for this? Even if it's like, I don't know, 5 cents on the dollar. Like, we have not, as humans, figured this out. And I think the soonest, the fastest way to get that done actually is through blockchain, some Ethereum-based applications and business models that, you know, where you can hold a token and get paid for what you own and things like that. In this Web 2.0 world, centralized companies, it's been very difficult. So companies have benefited, but citizens have not.
Yeah, the incentive is key, and also in this context, we invested in one Swedish company called Climate View. Basically, that provides a tool for municipalities, local municipalities, to set a data baseline for this carbon emissions, for example, and then they can set a target and they can monitor all this progress, then so that they can issue a green bond, which basically you don't have to pay like a higher interest in comparison to the normal bond, then so that you have kind of incentivized to do the right thing in the right way. So then I believe that there's more these kind of startups would come from this region, but we'd like to see more also similar things happening from Japan. Then as Japan has like a quite large industry and there's so many things can be done altogether, then happy to see if these the students here can really start those kind of climate impactful companies from Japan. I really personally love to see that. But sorry, I think we are running a bit over time, but thank you, Raina. Thank you, Takeda-san. Thank you for all students. Thank you for joining today. And even it's over 8 p.m. here, a bit late evening. Thank you, Takeda-san.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So huge thanks for sharing your stories and tips. It's a very, very amazing you. So that's all for today. And again, please give him claps. Thank you very much.